At ease! You stand to attention and hit your head on the bunk bed above you. You just got your first hour of sleep in the last 20. But before you can process the pain, squad leader tells you to pack your gear and prepare to drop in 5 minutes. Your gear weighs about 60 pounds and consists of a bag and a backpack, both stuffed to the brim for the challenges to come. In your curiosity, you peek out the window. You have heard the stories, but are shocked and see what can only be described as the fallout from a chemical power plant explosion. The air is otherworldly, changing from purple to green in rapid succession, and visibility is approximately 30 feet. An inexperienced mind would suspect fog, but as a trained soldier, you know better. It's pollution and the remnants of what was fertile farmlands. In these lands, the sun isn't visible. You can't tell dusk from dawn, midday from midnight. You and your 5 squad mates gather at the hangar bay door. Your mission is no easy task. To land behind enemy lines under the cover of darkness, traverse through infested hostile territory, and extract with an embedded operative of questionable intentions. To maintain your cover, you cloak yourself in a heavy black jacket. This is the most you can do, as any more efforts at concealment would simply make you stand out. Everyone is visibly anxious, even the most seasoned of your crew. 45 seconds before the drop, squad leader depressurizes the cabin and swings open the metallic door. You only have a 30-second window to drop, at which point you'll be too entrenched to be rescued. The sounds of outside are revolting and violent. Screaming, clattering, and distant popping makes communication difficult, while the air induces immediate headaches. You hear the countdown. 5, 4, 3, boom! The enemy has invaded your transport, knocking squad leader to the ground. You are being overrun and chaos ensues. Others push out the invaders, who cling to the outside of the transport, while you get squad leader to his feet. Move, move, move! You are third to jump, but lose your footing, and trip, landing in a large puddle with a suspicious aroma. Your gear is damaged by the fall, with one wheel going loose, and your hoodie falls, revealing your white complexion. Immediately, the enemy begins to scream and point at you. There are hundreds of them. You can't understand a word they are saying, but it doesn't matter. You scramble to your feet, and adrenaline takes over, your gear feeling weightless. You see squad leader and second mate about 20 feet in front of you, and you try to close the gap. As you run, you avoid unsightly obstacles, including rubble, stray animals, red puddles, feces, and enemy encampments, all while the mob gives chase. You climb stairs, turn corners, and eventually hide within a pack of non-combatants. You take refuge in a dark alley with squad leader and second mate. There are flies everywhere, and the walls are black with dried shit. The floor's wet and reeking of piss. Second mate finally gets reception on his sat phone and calls for extraction. The other 3 members of your crew were lost in the chaos. You will never see them again. The rendezvous point is a 1/4 mile north. This is the closest our contact can get to ensure safe pickup, and he will arrive in 45 minutes. We collect ourselves in the alley for about 10 before venturing out once again, donned in our hoods. We slip by many enemy patrols and arrive at the exfil at the exact right time, but traffic is at a standstill, and we are notified of a 5-minute delay. We keep our heads down and wait. Once our ride pulls up, we throw our gear in the car and hop in, escaping into the darkness of New Delhi. You see, for thousands of years, great empires have selected some of their own to venture beyond the horizon and see what this great earth had to offer. Explorers were expected to return with treasure, knowledge, and information on what was to be conquered across the seas. These men were the best and brightest the empire had to offer. Certainly they were the most adventurous. But today you don't get the best, nor the brightest. You get me. I recently returned from India, a land that is so treacherous and so deadly that in order to survive, I had to become someone else. I had to become one of them. India is a land ravished with disease, a terrible climate, internal division, and unparalleled poverty, which makes the entire society a low-trust, target-rich environment. It's polluted in India, and the people are thirsty. I'm your host, Nicholas Nunez, and this is the No Good News Podcast. So yeah, I'm back from India, and that is a crazy, crazy place. What you guys just heard is my retelling of arriving at the New Delhi train station deep in the night. We picked up these 3 other guys on the train, and we had great intentions to, travel the city and spend a few days with them. But in the chaos of opening that metal door between the train and the outside world, we completely lost them. So my experience in New Delhi could have potentially been very different if we were able to, protect them from the elements, and if they were to survive that encounter. But at least I made it out with my core buddies. Those being Abel and Suman. Abel would be a South Indian. He's from the state of Kerala, which is at the very bottom of India, and Suman is a Korean from Texas, but he's studying in India as well. And Abel is studying in the city of Bangalore. So, New Delhi is just a treacherous place, and I'll start off by just talking about, rather than New Delhi, just about the living conditions and the things that remain constant no matter where you are in India. So India, there's a lot of talk about how India is a rising power and how they're going to, take over the world, things like that. India is a very divided nation. They've got approximately 28 states, and in America we've got 50. And India can be basically divided into 4 sectors. You've got the south, you've got the northeast, the northwest, and then I guess the north, which is really the central, central north. And the south of India has about 25% of the population, but they have, some measures say up to 40% of the GDP, but maybe 35 is more accurate. So the south of India has less people, but they're just more wealthy. So that leads to better living conditions. But let's be clear. When I say better living conditions, it's still worse than, Compton. It's worse than the worst American place that you could think of. And in the South, they have their own languages. So each state in the South has their own language, which makes communication between states in the South very difficult. So I started my trip in India in the city of Bangalore. And you guys can pull up a map, or, maybe producer, you could put this on the screen. Bangalore is located in the state of Karnataka. Karnataka is a southern state, and they speak a language called Kannada, not Canada, Kannada, K-A-N-N-A-D-A. And Kannada is a Dravidian language, and you're going to hear me say this a lot, but these southern languages are all Dravidian, which means that they are of older times, and they are not linguistically connected to the North Indian languages, pluracy. The primary North Indian language is Hindi. So when most people think of India, they think that people speak Hindi, but that's actually only true in the north. And even then, there are communities and regions in the north that don't speak Hindi. So we've got Kannada in the south, in the state of Karnataka. We have Telugu, we have Tamil, we have all sorts of, different languages going on in the south here. We've got Malayalam, which is what my friend speaks because he was born in Kerala, as I mentioned a moment ago. And, the language of Kerala is Malayalam. So interstate commerce in the South is conducted in English. So you can actually find a good number of people who know English, especially wealthier people who do, like I said, interstate commerce will definitely know English in the South. So the language issue is a real problem in India because you can often have, and I say this with total seriousness, 2 people who live just 10 minutes apart and they can't even talk to each other. And that can make economic development and, infrastructure development very challenging in India. In the United States, we only have three languages. We've got, English, we have Spanish, and we have African American. But in general, everybody everybody speaks English. So so people can communicate relatively well,
I did not see that coming.
and the nation is united. But it's not like that in India. So in South India, it's illegal to have signage in Hindi. So the North, the government of India is controlled by the North, because the North has 75% of the population. But even though they have so many more people, they are because they have so many more people, they're trying to impose their will on the South. So what does that look like? What does it look like for the region of South India to be oppressed? Well, it looks like a few things. Number one is you have the government not recognizing the southern languages, like I mentioned earlier: Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, Telugu, etc., etc. It also looks like funneling government money and infrastructure projects to the north and leaving the south behind. And lastly, it looks like overtaxation and unfair taxation, because the South Indians are wealthier in general than North Indians, but because of that, they have to pay more taxes. And the people of South India are upset that they pay more taxes because all the government funding and infrastructure money goes to the north. And let's be clear, they need the infrastructure development. I mean, a lot of these cities don't even have paved roads in a lot of areas. You don't have paved roads, you don't have public bathrooms, you don't have safe drinking water. I mean, on every level, the country isn't developed to the point where people can really thrive. The people of India, they don't thrive, they just survive. They're an industrious people, and they are a weathered people. There's a lot of homelessness in India, no matter where you go, but certainly in the north. And a homeless person in America, simply couldn't survive in India. They don't have the fortitude and the tenacity and the vigor that's needed to survive the streets of Bangalore or of New Delhi. The homeless Desis of India are a very persistent bunch. I mean, they will steal, they will rob you, they will chase you, as I've been chased, as I described in the train station. They will come over to you and they will pull on you. They will touch you. They will show you that they have a baby, but it's just a doll, but they pretend that it's a real child, and they think that you don't know the difference because they're trying to get money from you. And, if you were to give money to, every homeless person that you were to see in India, even a multimillionaire would come back broke because there's just too many of them. But like I said, there is a culture of tenacity and hyper-capitalism within India, because unlike the United States that has well-tuned and strong welfare programs that help people who are unemployed or homeless, India doesn't really have those things. And they don't have public infrastructure like homeless shelters, for example. So because of that, if you're homeless, there's actually a real chance that you may die on the streets. So that creates a different level of desperation that isn't found in the United States. So you have to keep that in mind when you're traveling there. And homelessness is a real problem in the north. It's still a problem in the south, but it's worse off in the north. So that kind of explains like the north-south divide when it comes to poverty and wealth. The northeast of India is probably the poorest region of India. In the northeast, they speak Hindi technically, but most people speak Bengali, and Bengali is obviously different than Hindi. Northeast India borders Bangladesh, for those of you who got the map out. And part of the Indian partition plan, India used to be, Pakistan and Bangladesh used to be part of India. But then due to the partition plan, the goal of the partition plan was that all the Muslims in India, of which there are many, would move to Pakistan. And I actually forget the reason that Bangladesh was quartered off into its own country, because the people of Bangladesh, the Bengalis, they generally speak Hindi. I mean, yeah, sure, their language is different. They speak Bengali, but if that was the reason for them to separate, then India would be like 22 different countries because they've got 22 languages over there. So I don't really know why Bangladesh split. It's possible that they split simply because they're the poorest and that India didn't want to have to deal with them because Bangladesh is even worse off than India. But so that's the Northeast. I didn't go to the Northeast because the Northeast is even more dangerous than what I saw, which is even hard to believe, to be honest. But that's the Northeast, and then you've got the Northwest. The Northwest is a desert. It touches Pakistan, and this is mainly the states of Gujarat, Rajasthan, and then you've actually got some disputed territory because India is actually at war. They're in active combat with the Chinese and with the Pakistanis over a period of a piece of land called Kashmir. Kashmir is also the name of a material, beautiful. You could get cashmere clothing, etc. My only point is the Northwest is a desert. It's very unpopulated, but it has a lot of terrorism. You've got a lot of, I'll use the word jihadists, but a safer term would just be Muslims. You've got a lot of Muslims, Pakistanis, who, invade India. They cross the border and they commit terrorist attacks all over the country. So that constant terrorism with suicide vests, etc., leads to a lot of militarization within India. So when you walk around India, you're going to see soldiers with machine guns pretty much everywhere. Security is a big deal because, like I mentioned, they undergo a lot of terrorist attacks. I did go to the Northwest. I went to the city of Jaipur. Jaipur is the most populated city in the Northwest, and it's the capital of Rajasthan, which is one of the one of the capitals. It's the capital of Rajasthan. Gujarat is also touches Pakistan, and it's very wealthy. I didn't make it out there, but just because of limited time. Northwest, the food is very different. Lots of Arab influences. Food is actually less spicy, I would say, because Arab food is generally less spicy than traditional Indian food. And the Northwest is very wealthy, especially Gujarat. Modi, M-O-D-I, he is the Prime Minister of India. He's actually from Gujarat. And he takes a lot of government money and funnels it into his own state. Modi is part of the BJP, which is the largest political party in India. And the second largest would be a party called Congress, not to be confused with the American Congress. The Congress Party is generally seen as more left-leaning, and they actually have more support in rural areas, which is the opposite dynamic of the United States, where conservatives are generally more rural and liberals are generally more urban. That's actually flipped in India because the Conservative Party has its foothold in the north, and the large population centers vote for the Conservative Party because the Conservative Party will give them money to develop infrastructure and things along those lines. And infrastructure ranges from schools to clean water to plumbing. I mean, the plumbing over here is incredible. It's just completely exposed on the street. And it's not like American plumbing where it's like a nice big pipe, and you've got a lot of flow through. In India, the plumbing is literally the width of a hose. So you've got a hose on the side of the street. And I said to my friend, why are these people not putting their hoses, back in their apartment complexes? And he's like, those aren't hoses. That's the plumbing. It's like, that's how you get your water when you take a shower or you use the sink. So then you're wondering, well, wait a second, when you flush, what happens? Well, usually when you flush, it just goes right on the street. Or it goes into areas that are on the street but covered. So they have so more urban areas like Bangalore and Delhi, for example, certain regions of the city will have elevated sidewalks. And the elevated sidewalk is because below your feet is the human waste that flows into the street. But you're just on a sidewalk that was built above it. But you could still smell it. If I were, India is really, best described as a sensory experience. The senses, the senses of India. You've got the smell of just the shit and the feces. It's everywhere. We'll get into that in a second. You've got, the taste of fire. Whenever you eat the food, you cry immediately. Just the fire destroys your insides. You've got the touch of freezing cold water because they don't have warm water. And, you could just imagine, it's like an ice bath every time you want to take a shower. I mean, in the United States, cleanliness and hygiene are seen as the default. But to be cleanly in India, it's a matter of self-sacrifice and perseverance, because you have to really push through the torture that is a cold water bucket shower, which we'll get into shortly. It's the sound. It's the sound of the traffic, just the incessant horns and the barking of wild dogs on the street as they fight for scraps of burned garbage. It's the sight of pollution in the sky that burns your eyes and impairs your judgment and gives you a long-term cough, which I'm still recovering from. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but India really took a toll on my body. It's a dangerous place, not only the population, but just the elements. We always look to Gandhi and his hunger strikes, and we say, wow, Gandhi really did something incredible by, starving himself along with the people of India to make a statement against, British imperialism, right? But now, after going to India, I realized that, it's actually preferable to starve in India. I mean, the eating is agony. That's what I'm trying to explain. Just to nourish yourself is a real sacrifice. I mean, you're mainly working with rice over here. I mean, and these Indian kids will do whatever they can for just some rice. I mean, they're hungry. But the problem with Indian food is, they said, this rice is too bland. Let me just pour molten lava on top of it, because the second it touches your tongue, you just start to cry and you can't breathe, and you're in pain. You're red. You're flush with color. The curries are all sorts of colors. You're working with red curry, black curry, green curry, but it's all the same. It's just fire. And you can't, and it's part of the experience. It's a real cultural experience, but there's really nothing more cultural than a visit to an Indian bathroom, because an Indian bathroom, well, first off, it's a complete enigma, because number one, you got to find one first. I mean, they don't even really have bathrooms over there. I mean, most people just literally shit on the street. I did some research before this podcast because, as you guys know, I like to be factual here on the No Good News podcast. And let me also take a quick moment to say, my time in India was pleasurable. It wasn't all misery, but, this is the No Good News podcast. So we're going to talk about bad news, right? We're not going to say good things. So we're going to talk about India and its open defecation problem. So, as you walk around India, you're going to see signage, and it's going to say ODF. And ODF stands for Open Defecation Free. And these signs are all over the country. But every time you see a sign that says ODF, it actually means the opposite. It means that this area is just going to be full of feces. And I know this is unsightly to talk about and to think about. So for those of you with sensitive ears, we'll put a timestamp in the description, and you could skip past this if you'd like. But, after looking into it, 600 million people a day open defecate in India. Open defecate is defined as taking a shit in a non-private environment. So this could range from a field to the street to a cab. Yes, I've gotten in many cabs, and there's actual shit on the floor inside of the cab. So it gets to the point where you're gonna ask yourself, you're gonna ask yourself, how did somebody manage to take a shit here? It's a question of, logistically, how did somebody take a shit inside of a cab? I got inside of a cab on 2 occasions, And I step inside and the floor is black, and that's fine. That's typical in a car. But it's mushy, and I look down and I stepped in shit. And I say to myself, how did shit get inside of the cab? How did that happen? Was somebody holding it and they put it on the ground? Did they drop their pants inside of the moving vehicle? I mean, it's a real enigma how it's almost an art how these people are able to take a shit anywhere. And it's just culturally accepted. I mean, if you're able to go 45 minutes without seeing a bare ass, then you've really done yourself a favor, because it's just everywhere you turn. Remember, 600 million people a day open defecate in India. The population of America is estimated at about 360 million people. So more people shit in the street every day in India than live in the United States. Let that sink in for a second. There is shit everywhere. And it's not only human, but it's monkey, it's cow, goat, dog, bird. I mean, just pick an animal. Because, in the United States, when we want to see animals, we got to go to the zoo. Maybe you go to your friend's house, they have a dog or something. Maybe they're exotic, they have an iguana. Just walking around in India is a zoo. I mean, there's animals everywhere. You look up, the monkeys are watching from above, waiting to swoop down and take your food. Or if you get too close, they'll hurl their feces at you. And because of that, you got to cross the street. I mean, but here's the thing, like, people are okay with it. Just get, I stepped in shit maybe every day in India. It's pretty much impossible to avoid. I mean, you go inside of the street and it's just everywhere. And after a while, you get good at recognizing, what mammal let go of this load. I mean, you get really good at distinguishing what's what. Because here's the thing about feces in India. It's never solid. It's always liquid. You're excuse me. I'm getting PTSD. Excuse me. And it's always orange. It's just fucking. It's everywhere. I mean, it's part of the culture, and you just pray to God that it's not in your food. I mean, Anthony Bourdain, if you guys have heard of this guy, he's a famous chef. I think he's passed away now. But he has a great quote about when he visited Japan for the first time. And he said, I wrote down the quote. He said, this is a quote from Anthony Bourdain, God bless his soul. Going to Japan for the first time is a transformative experience. It is a powerful and violent experience. It was like taking acid for the first time. I see the whole world in a different way. India is like tasting shit for the first time. Japan is what the world could be, and India is what the world is and what the world was. That is how I would describe India. It's what the world is and what the world was. Japan is like taking acid. India is like tasting shit, because, they say that taste is 80% smell. I think that's what they say. And, since the waste is everywhere, the food starts to taste the same. You understand what I'm saying? Because everything smells like shit. It's all around you. I'm going to tell a brief story about the Karnataka market, and then we'll leave this topic behind, because I know it's not good for the imagination of our viewers.
Or the producer.
Or the producer. That's true. I'm sorry, producer, that you got to deal with this. If you guys could see his face right now, you would just be, I'm sure you guys have the same face that he's making, and I do too, but I'm a soldier returning from battle. I'm an explorer who's here to tell you, don't go to India. But the Karnataka market is in downtown Bangalore, and producer, we'll get some photos of this up on the screen. And you walk into the market, and you're saying, oh, okay, it's indoors. No, I shouldn't have even said that. It's maybe 6 square blocks of area, and it's just outdoors on the street. And people just set up, their tables, and they're selling fruit. It's a food store. Okay, this is how people buy food in India. There's some clothing, you maybe got your socks, your sunglasses, but it's mostly food. It's mostly produce. And people are yelling prices, and there's just thousands of people. I mean, there's so many people that you can't even take out your phone because it might even get stolen. It's just absolutely crazy. And you look down at the ground because you just don't want to lose your step. And the ground is brown. I'm like, that's weird. That's a unique kind of pavement. I've never seen that before. Maybe it's dirt. Maybe it's some dirt. But after you look at the ground and you zoom in more closely, you realize the ground isn't actually dirt. It's feces. Just the scent will inoculate you. I mean, if you thought chloroform was powerful, you haven't even tried this. And it's just like unbelievable. And it's murky. It's just, producer, take a look. I mean, we'll put this on the screen, but you guys could really get a look at this. And you can actually see that the entire ground is coated. And in India, people wear sandals or are barefoot. Very, very few people in India wear closed-toe shoes, and that's because of the heat and the humidity. So to give themselves some breathability, they wear open-toe shoes or often go barefoot. And you should see the calluses on these people's feet. It's gnarly. But just the ground is made of actual shit, and it's human. You can tell by the color that it's human. And then I started doing some research, and I realized that due to the lack of plumbing, this is just simply, they always say, water finds the lowest point, right? Well, they've got no plumbing there. So the entire market is built on, let's ballpark it, it's a foot deep, the whole thing. And I know it's a foot deep because while I was at the market, it actually started raining. So you start to sink into it. And I'm sorry, I'm remembering, excuse me. It just rises up. They say a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, you could really say that about the Karnataka market. I mean, just everybody, it's like quicksand. And no one even bats an eye. It's just a regular day in Bangalore. People are doing their thing. People want fruit. They're hungry. Give me some rice, please. And people don't mind about the shit on the floor. There's cows everywhere. I mean, you guys probably already knew that about India, but everywhere you go, there's just cows on the street. And the cows are, they're one of the people. I mean, that's just, no one's bothered. No one bats an eye. And the cows survive by eating garbage. That's how they survive. And they forage in the streets. And one of the most unsightly things I saw in India was a cow eating a watermelon out of the floor. Remember, the floor in this market is made of feces. So the cow is literally eating the feces. Well, producer, throw up some photos. And like I said, we'll timestamp this so you guys can skip. But, it was just so unsightly. And then when I went back to my room, I was really happy that, I bought myself a second pair of shoes when I got there because I knew it'd get bad. So I just went back and, I said to myself, should I clean these shoes? And it's just a lost cause. So what do? I'm one of the people. I'm one of the people now. I'm a Desi boy. So I'm just going to throw my shoes onto the street like everybody else does. And that's it, done. Because in India, if you go into a restaurant and they take your garbage, they'll literally just take in front of you. You'll watch this happen. They'll take your garbage and they'll just throw it outside onto the street. They don't have, how to explain? They don't have like garbage collection. Like they have garbage trucks, but like they're like optional. Like in the United States, recycling is optional. And if you don't, and your recyclables will just go to a landfill if you put them in the trash bin. Well, in India, garbage collection is optional. So most people just throw their garbage into the street. And what a lot of people do is when the garbage becomes, too numerous, they will throw cooking oil onto it and they'll just burn the garbage. So at night, in India, you walk around and there's just fires everywhere on the rooftops, on the street. I mean, the night sky of India is lit by the flames of burning garbage. And yeah, it improves visibility, but the pollution, because, you're burning plastic, paper. I mean, just it's terrible. And the air of India, oh my God. I mean, the air changes colors, guys. It's purple, it's green, it's gray, it's orange. I mean, you got to be careful out there, guys. I mean, the sun don't shine in New Delhi. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. I believe it was 2:30 p.m. and I look up into the sky, and the sun is red and orange, and the sky is red. And I was like, oh, it's sunset. And I look at my phone, it's 3:30 p.m. And I was like, oh, that's so strange. And then for the next few hours, I was watching the sun. The sun wasn't moving, maybe a little bit, but the sun's up. It's midday, it's daytime in New Delhi. But the sun, because of the pollution, it appears to be a different color. That's what I'm trying to describe to the audience here. That, in the United States, our sun is yellow. Our sun is bright white. I mean, if you look at the sun, if you go outside and you look at the sun, you're going to blind yourself. Don't do this. You're going to go blind. I mean, you're literally going to go blind if you look at the sun. But in India, the pollution is so bad that you can look at the sun unimpaired. It doesn't even hurt to look at the sun because all the pollution is a natural protectant from the sun. I mean, you're not going to get sunburnt. And if you look at the UV index, it's like very low because, UV index isn't even an accurate measure because you've got this protection and just, I mean, this is going to be kind of strange to talk about, but my acne was terrible there just because of the air. I mean, the pollutants get into your skin. You taste it. When you open your mouth outside, you taste the air. It's just incredible. It's the smog, it's just, I don't know how people do it. I mean, really. And you try to wear a mask, but, it makes, people judge you for wearing a mask. Some people do. In wealthier areas, people will wear masks and it's socially acceptable. But, in poorer areas, which is the vast majority of the city, people don't wear masks. So I'm just trying to get across that India is a sensory experience. It's an experience that you really have to feel, in order to really understand it. And the spices, I mean, they clean, you get, they clean you out. And I was Gandhi for a few days. I went on my own hunger strike because, it's just, you'd rather feel empty than feel full. Does that make sense? Have you ever had that feeling, producer? Yeah. Like you're so full that like you can't even move, yeah. I took, I journal. Whenever I travel, I journal. I think that's important. And here's what I wrote on the 21st of January. I woke up at 1:30 a.m. I could barely move, and I felt the intense gurgles in my stomach. I crawled to the bathroom, but nothing happened. However, I felt it coming. I felt the fire and smelled the ash. The pain was immense and brought me to tears. The grain-based diet was turning my gut into a fermentation factory, constantly producing wicked and flammable gas. The intense spices make eating agonizing and shitting into torture. Forced starvation is preferable. So that's just a quick excerpt from my journal, coming to a bookstore near you, of my experience using the bathroom in India. It was truly brutal. And the problem is you've got no prep time. I mean, it's like when you've got to go, you maybe have a 45-second warning. And that's why it's everywhere, all over the streets. Because I was talking to my friend who's been living there for about a year now and who also grew up in India. And I said to him, does anybody in this country have a solid bowel movement? And he said, no. He said to me that it's just different over there. this will be my final note on this, and then we're going to move on to, some other topics, some other cities, because I do have some more to say, but, not bathroom or food related. He was explaining to me that, in India, when people, eating is done just to, survive. In the United States, a great meal is seen as, a luxurious experience. When you go to a restaurant, you have a server. You'll get a server in India, but they don't really care about service. I mean, when you sit down, when you go to a restaurant in India and you sit down, the guy brings you to your table, you sit down. He doesn't even walk away. He just expects you to order right then. You didn't even look at the menu yet, because they don't really have that culture of service and of patience. We're taking a cab one time. In India, the cabs are called auto rickshaw. Producer, you could throw a photo of this up too. An auto rickshaw is green and yellow. It's a 3-wheeled vehicle. It's got 3 wheels, 2 in the back, 1 in the front. The driver sits in the front, and in the back, it's like a sofa. And there's room for maybe 3 people, 2 people that are, it could fit 2 Americans, let's say it that way. It could fit 2 Americans and maybe 7 Indians. But it's, but it's a pretty small space back there. And they drive you around, and Indian traffic is incredible. So I'm actually going to talk about that next. But our driver just pulls over on the side of the road, doesn't say anything. Not that it would matter, because I can't understand him. Being in India for 15 days, it's like I was deaf and mute. I don't understand anything, and I have nothing to say. So imagine how terrifying that is. You're deaf and mute, walking around a country of 1.4 billion people. He gets out of the auto rickshaw, and he crosses the street through traffic. We'll discuss that in a minute. As he's crossing the street, I look at him. I'm like, what's going on? Is this guy just going to leave us? Because people will do that. People will just get out of the car and leave you. And then they just have to get out and find a new cab. It's very strange. But as he's walking across the street, he's limping. His right leg is completely stiff. I think that's weird. And I look at him. And he's wearing jeans, which is very common in India. And the back of his leg, his right leg, you see what looks like a water stain running down his entire back of the leg. And he's not wearing shoes. But I look at his foot. He's not wearing shoes. I look at his heel. I look at his foot. And it's literally diarrhea. Leaking onto the street. Now, that's not a problem, because there's already 50 pounds of shit in the street anyways. But it's more like it's just leaking. Like even people who live there, just the body has no warning system for this level of spice. He crosses the street now without batting an eye. He just drops his pants, takes a shit, pulls his pants up, doesn't wipe, crosses back, gets back in the cab, and keeps driving. That's just a normal day, just a normal day as one of the people. And I'll leave it there. So now we'll talk about some Indian traffic. All right, so, basically, the way traffic works in India is the concept of a lane doesn't really exist. I'll talk about my first night landing in the country. When I landed in India, I landed at 12:10 a.m., which is just after midnight, right? So it's the middle of the night. You'd think that in the middle of the night, the streets would be empty. Even our most populated cities are pretty vacant at midnight when you walk around. Certainly at 2 a.m., the streets are vacant. I go outside, I get myself a cab, and I'm going to go to my friend's place. My friend lives in Bangalore, so that's where I'm going to start off the trip. And I'm in the cab, and the guy starts driving on the right side of the road, which as an American is totally normal. That's a normal experience. We drive on the right side of the road. And it's the middle of the night, so I don't really think anything of it. And we're on the highway. We're going maybe 60 miles per hour, maybe 70 miles per hour, which is great. The roads are less crowded because it's nighttime. During the day, you can't really go that speed. But out of nowhere, some cars come over the horizon, and their headlights are facing us. So they're about to drive right into us. And we're all going like 60 miles per hour. And then I realized that in India, you're supposed to drive on the left side of the road. But my driver is on the right side of the road, driving against traffic at full speed. So like I've literally been in the country for like 20 minutes now. And already I'm in peril. We're going full speed on this highway. And the guy has no intention, and there's a median. In the middle of the highway, there's a median. So, as most highways have. So you can't cross sides. And I'm trying to think back to, how did this guy even end up on the wrong side of the highway? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, how did he even end up on this side? And to be honest with you, I was so tired, and, I really don't know how that ended up happening. But the driver seemed totally unfazed. And as I would learn in India, this is just normal behavior. It's just normal behavior in India for people to drive wherever they want. They'll drive in the right direction, in the wrong direction, sideways. They don't care. They'll just cross through. There's basically no traffic lights anywhere in the country. I mean, if there's a traffic light in India, you know that you're in a really crazy intersection, because there's basically it doesn't really. My 15 days on the ground, I probably saw 8 traffic lights. That kind of gives you perspective of how few there are. And they were all in the north. In the south, there really isn't enough traffic. There's not enough population to justify a traffic light. And let's be clear, the South has like 400 million people, but there's just not enough people to justify traffic lights. So he's just driving against traffic at full speed, and the road's like barely paved. There's potholes everywhere. He's swinging left and right. I mean, to be honest, it was kind of fun, but it was also extremely dangerous. But we survived. Obviously, I'm here to tell you the tales. He brings me to the hotel, and then I get out, and he says goodnight, and I give him a nice tip. India is very cheap. I should talk about a little bit of economics here. 86, we're going to give, I mean, it changes every day, but approximately 86 rupees converts to $1. And a singular water bottle is only 10 rupees in India, which converts to about 12 cents approximately. Whereas in America, as you guys know, it's about $2.50 if you buy a Dasani water bottle, And, everything is just super cheap. A 45-minute cab ride is going to cost you about $2 American. So everything is, a luxury restaurant, beautiful restaurant. So luxurious that it's empty because no one can even afford to go there. A luxury restaurant, it's going to run you maybe 12 or 13 USD. So, you can really eat like a king. I mean, excluding flights and excluding some luxury purchases I made, I think I spent $300 in 2 weeks, which is super cheap, right? So, it's definitely a budget trip, but you got to know what you're getting into because, when you go to India, it's not really a vacation. It's more like survival training. You're basically paying. It's like you're going on Survivor, like you're basically paying for the opportunity to put yourself, in danger. I was unaware of this before I went. People were warning me, but I thought my friend would take care of me. And let's be clear, he did take care of me, but there's only so much care you can get in a nation like India. So, overall, the country had some really beautiful tourist sites. If you can get over just the sheer number of people. But, it was a good experience. I learned a lot of history. I learned about, some cultural divides. I learned about the history of the British and how they colonized India. I learned about how India is a nation divided. And I came back to America very happy with how united we are as a country. There's a lot of talk about American division. But it's really not, because our people aren't hurting each other in the streets because of the area that they're from. A lot of our crime in the United States is between two people of the same ethnicity. But that's actually not the case in India. In India, there's a lot of crime, cross-racially, so that leads to a lot more hate crime. There's a lot of religious crime. I went to church twice over there. I went to Catholic church on 2 separate occasions. There's a small number of Catholics over there, but my friend is Christian, so we were able to find some Christian churches in the South, especially. So yeah, I've told a few stories. I've told about my experience. India would be really good for a person who lives in maybe Croatia. I mean, basically, I'm trying to think of I mean, it's a country about nature, so if you like live in like maybe Eastern Europe or something where it's very picturesque and beautiful, you would maybe enjoy the picturesque and beautiful nature that is India. The environment and the scenery and the architecture really is incredible. And the forts and the palaces, maybe the best place on earth if you want to see some good architecture. So I'm really happy with what I got there. But at the same time, you have to be prepared for the perils that come with just the population load and the infrastructure of the country. So it's definitely got its pros and it's definitely got its cons. So I think that I've given a good overview of what it's like to experience India. I mean, a lot of you guys listening here know me personally, so when we talk, I'll probably talk about the good things because it's obviously no fun to talk about the bad things in the company of others, and that's why you're here to join me on this podcast so I can talk about the bad things. But I could show you some pretty photos if you ever ask or things like that. But in general, I think that was a good overview of of what it's like to be in India. So we're going to do a quick ad break here, and then we're going to talk about some American news because, while I was gone, while I was abroad, Trump took office and a lot's been going on. So we're going to talk about that. Just a quick word from our sponsor. Are you tired of seeing black and yellow on your walls? Do you want to play your part and move your great nation in the right direction? Then today's sponsor is perfect for you. Charmin Ultra Soft. Charmin will help you clean your bum and clean your streets, which are both foreign concepts to an Indian national. Charmin is looking to break ground and gain market share in the Indian subcontinent, which is why they are speaking to our American viewers. Charmin wants you to join their campaign to clean an Indian who will take these practices back home with them. Use hashtag DesiBottom to show off how you spread our TP to the Indian diaspora near you. Back from the ad break, we're now going to do some American news. We're talking Trump, we're talking Elon. So, and I want to make that clear from the start. We're talking Elon because Elon's basically the front man. He's as involved as Trump is in this presidency. And I don't know why Trump is making that choice. Maybe Elon's paid him off. Maybe Trump is using Elon as collateral to basically execute his radical agenda, but Elon takes all the heat and Trump is shielded from it. Because there is some merit in that, having a front man, as I mentioned, doing things on your behalf. And then if things go bad, you can point at them and they take all the blame. Trump gets inaugurated on the 20th, obviously, on January the 20th. And, the world is in peril. Look, other countries are freaking out. Once Trump, even before he gets in, he's talking about tariffs. And what's the benefit of not recording this podcast every week, for example, is that I get to see madness unfold and sometimes resolve itself between episodes. So an example of that would be Trump was threatening 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, which I actually discussed in the last episode and the problems of that. So I guess I have some good predictive power. Who knows? But, Trump was threatening to do 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, which I've already discussed would be a bad idea. And just before they were supposed to go into effect, the Canadians agreed to put, I think it was 10,000 soldiers on the border of Canada and the United States to stop fentanyl trafficking, and which is so silly because really nothing bad happens on that border. That would be, that practice would be keeping the fentanyl within America because it's not like the Canadians make fentanyl and send it over. It comes from South America, and then we send it from the American side of the border up to Canada, but whatever. And then the Mexicans made a similar agreement, which is actually good. They agreed to put 10,000 soldiers, and they would crack down on cartels and drugs as well. But I think Trump settled for this agreement because, like, for threatening a trade war was not necessary to get these cooperative. I mean, I'm not even going to call it concessions. Mexico putting soldiers on their border and Canada doing it as well for drug and trafficking enforcement, that isn't even a concession from those governments. That's a cooperative measure between our nations, you know? So I think Trump is using those, what he's branding as concessions, as a win because he saw that the markets were tanking. The days before the tariffs, leading up to the tariffs, the markets were in free fall, and commodity prices, like gold, for example, were skyrocketing because, as I've discussed, tariffs are not good for the United States. I mean, our whole economic system is built on trade deficits and free trade. So the markets were bracing for that impact, which was causing the S&P to spiral. And then Trump just had to find some other reason to claim victory and back down from the policy. So, I mean, I don't know. That happened. He still did the tariffs on China. But I did say this in the last episode. That's like the best case for it. But if you actually look at the trade deficit between the United States and China, we actually just hit an all-time high in our monthly trade deficit with the Chinese. And in fact, we hit an all-time high with our trade deficit on a month-over-month basis. The trade deficit's interesting because Mexico recently, I think it's within like the last 6 months or so, Mexico surpassed China as our number one trading partner, which means that China used to give us the majority of our imported goods, but that is now Mexico. So that's a good thing. I mean, that's good. Once again, makes the argument against tariffing Mexico, but it shows that we're slowly but surely weaning ourselves off of Chinese dependence. And even though we've got the tariffs going in against China, we're still making record trade deficits in the United States. So it's like within the last 6 months, we've had like 3 of those months be within the top 5 highest trade deficits we've ever had. So if you looked at the 5 months in American history where the trade deficit was highest, 3 of them are within like the last 6 months. So our trade deficits are insane. And by the way, the other 2, if you're curious, that was during COVID because all the dock workers in California had to go home because of COVID. And then once they came back, they unloaded a bunch of ships that had been sitting in port for weeks. So those other 2 values of the top 5 are kind of overinflated because it's basically pent-up demand. Hopefully that makes sense. But these recent trade deficit figures are even higher than those COVID numbers. So just on a standard month, just a regular business as normal month, we're topping what at the time was unheard of trade deficits in COVID. So the American trade deficit just keeps getting worse and worse. And Trump's claims that he's bringing manufacturing back to the United States, they may or may not be true, but at the end of the day, even the measures taken by Biden with the CHIPS Act, those are going to take years to get implemented. So, Trump's term is going to end. And by the end of his term, we're still not going to have even the first microchip factory open from what Biden signed in his term. That's how long it takes to, get a factory running. I mean, I don't know how many people in the audience are like civil engineers or whatever, but it takes a long time to build a factory, hire the staff, presumably get the unions involved, pass the regulations, all of that, source the supply chains. You can't just snap your fingers and get a factory up and running. So we'll see what Trump actually does on on his economic policy and on his manufacturing. But right now, it's yet to be seen. Elon's not much better. Elon is basically running the show. He's got this crew of young kids. I mean, they're 19. These kids are my age. They're the listener. These are young kids. They've got good computer skills, and Elon's basically gone in to the government, and he's just slashing and burning government spending. And some people say, yes, please do that. Recently in the news, he's completely destroyed and ended USAID, which is I guess the word to use would be bureaucracy or government apparatus wing of basically the government and how it funds aid projects all over the world or even domestically. And what Elon's uncovered is that a lot of this spending is suspicious, to say the least. They've cut a lot of funding to other countries around the world that we're trying to gain favor with, right? So one way that you gain favor and expand the American empire is by giving aid to other countries. Now, the conservative argument is we've been giving aid to these countries for decades and they're still not self-sufficient. Yeah, of course they're not, because we don't want them to be self-sufficient. You know, we want these countries to be dependent on us for our aid. That gives us leverage over them for military dominance over them. Perhaps they let us have military bases in their country. Perhaps we control their foreign policy. Maybe they always vote with us or they always support us in regional conflicts. It allows us to control their natural resources, control who gets elected in their governments. We don't want them to be like, it's almost like Republicans don't understand empire building. They've got to play a few games of diplomacy. Like, they don't understand how this works. So they're coming out and they're saying, they like to point at Egypt. Egypt's one that they like, that I've been reading about. They say, we've been giving, because for the last few decades, Egypt has been in the top 5 receivers of USAID every year for a very long time. And it oscillates. Sometimes they're number 4, sometimes they're number 5, whatever. And they say, look at Egypt. Egypt is no better now than it was 20 years ago. In fact, they're worse. They have inflation, they have corruption. Yes, we want that. We want that because the corrupt dictator is our dictator. That's what we want. We control the Suez Canal because we've paid off the entire Egyptian government. This guy, Bob Menendez, he's a senator from some northeastern state. I forget exactly. He was just arrested and found guilty. He's going to jail because he was bribed by the government of Egypt. They found gold bars. They call him Gold Bar Menendez because he was found with gold bars from Egypt. So, he was caught guilty, completely red-handed. Jersey. Oh, he's from Jersey? Even better. That's sound. He's a paisan. There we go. Okay, so Bob Menendez, the guilty senator from New Jersey. But, once again, and Bob should go to jail. He was guilty, and he should go to jail. It's, in my view, personally, it's okay if we bribe and control foreign governments. It's not okay if they bribe and control us. That's my opinion. Is that a double standard? Yes, it is. Do I care? Absolutely not. So, and actually, I support Trump on this. Like today or yesterday, Trump signed an executive order that allows American government employees to bribe foreign officials. That was actually illegal under U.S. law, and now it's legal. And a lot of people are up in arms and getting very afraid about this. No, you should be excited. You should be excited that we are going to spread our corruption. It's about time that the world gets a taste of American corruption. We're the best at it. It's about time that we export what we're good at. Let's export our corruption. Let's control everybody. I mean, it's going to be great. You'll see. Now look, there's a chance of some cross-contamination that these people on the other end in other countries then try to bribe us. But let's be real. They already do that anyway. So at least now we can play ball and we won't handcuff ourselves. But people who are found, to be receiving bribes from other countries, they should go to jail. It'll keep our people on their toes. But we should absolutely encourage the bribing of other countries, 100%. So, we got to control the natural resources. I mean, this whole Greenland thing. Let's talk about Greenland for a second, and then I'll go back to Elon with the Treasury. There's been a lot of talk with Greenland. So Trump calls I think it's a woman. He calls the Prime Minister of Denmark. Producer, can we look up I think it's a woman. So he calls her, and the phone call gets leaked, which just means that Trump's, it is a woman. Her name is, I can't even pronounce, Fredrickson? We're going to call her Miss Fredrickson. That's what we're going to call her. He calls Miss Fredrickson, and he basically tries to strong arm her. Now, this was bad. This was a bad move by Trump. He should have taken a better approach. It's never good to open a negotiation with a threat. That's my personal opinion. But he opens up the negotiation with a threat of that we're just going to take Greenland by force. This was unreasonable. He shouldn't have done that. He should have opened up with a price or hey, what are your thoughts on this? And I mean, the people of Greenland don't really want to be part of Denmark. And from the polling I've seen, they also don't really want to be a part of America. It's kind of like they want to be independent, but really they just want to be left alone. And I think that if we were to buy Greenland and turn them into essentially a territory, the way Puerto Rico is, and they were to self-govern, I do think that the standard of living for the people of Greenland would be improved because they would get access to, well, I mean, maybe not, because they would lose free healthcare, which they currently get from Denmark. It's complicated. My only point is Trump opened up the negotiations in a bad way. You know, at the end of the day, I don't really care about owning Greenland. I just care about the natural resources. So he could have finagled that, you know, using USAID or whatever. You know, maybe we own the mines, or American companies own the mining rights, and then maybe the government of Greenland or the government of Denmark gets a percentage of all profits, something like that. There's better ways he could have done it, but Trump, just being stubborn and a hothead, completely blew the negotiation. And I'd recommend for you guys to go online and, you know, read the transcript of this phone call. Once again, they say the phone call got leaked. It definitely didn't. It was like, leaked is an accurate term, but they leaked it on purpose because they wanted to show the public that like Trump is trying to do something. You know, a lot of these leaks in Washington are approved of in advance. Like, so it's the word leak isn't really the right term to use. So, but I do think that we should try to get Greenland. I mean, I certainly think that, you know, because everybody lives, the bottom third of Greenland basically contains the entire population, more or less. So why don't we just purchase the top 2/3? Something like that. Or maybe we get all the mining rights and we get the military rights. I don't really know, but like there are creative ways to make this work. And it doesn't have to be as clean cut as we own the island. So, I mean, maybe Trump can get a little more creative with his negotiations and go back to the table. But, and it wouldn't even, I mean, I read something, it was like, we can make every citizen of Greenland a millionaire with the purchase. That'd be great. They would love that. That'd be awesome. So, sorry, that was a tangent on Greenland. I do think that we should. It's absolutely in America's interest to take the island for the rare earth metals, because in a recent round of tariffs, as a result of Trump's tariffs, China has banned the export of all rare earth metals to the United States. And that's a real problem because China does over 2/3 of mining and refining of rare earth metals on Earth. So now we just lost a massive natural resource that is important in making microchips and military weaponry and just electronics in general. So we need to fill that void, and Greenland's the answer. So hopefully they can make Greenland work. I think that in due time it will happen, but I think that Trump's current approach is increasing the acquisition time and not decreasing it. That's all I'm trying to say. I don't think he did the negotiations right. But back to Elon with the Treasury. What Elon's doing right now is completely unconstitutional and illegal. He has gained access to the internal Treasury database that is responsible for making trillions of dollars of payments. Producer, have you heard of this? It's responsible for making all the payments that happen every year. So like the government, the House of Representatives has the power of the purse. This is written into the Constitution. This means that the House of Representatives is responsible for approving all spending. Once the spending is approved, the executive branch must distribute those funds. That's all the executive branch is important. The Treasury, which is under the executive branch, is responsible for facilitating the payment of government funds. They are not responsible for deciding what is and what is not approved. That is the power of the House of Representatives, the power of the purse. Elon's gone a step beyond because Elon isn't even part of the federal government. Doge is not an official government agency. Elon and his employees have not passed any background checks. And judges are already, this is including Republican judges, are already ruling that what's happening is unconstitutional, and they're demanding that all funds are distributed, even the USAID funds. even the funds that I support cutting, constitutionally, should be distributed. So on a legal basis, I think they should be distributed. On a personal basis, I'm against the funding, and I think that the government, the Republicans control the House. They own they control Congress. So they should do this the right way. Rather than causing a constitutional crisis, the Congress should use regular procedures and end the USAID that way, rather than doing it illegally through Elon. It's a bad precedent, guys. Remember, every few years, we switch political parties. And the last thing we want is to set the precedent that a political party can go in, circumvent Congress, circumvent the executive branch, and at this point, circumvent the judiciary, because the judiciary is telling Elon, what you're doing is illegal, you must distribute the funds. In fact, you don't even have authorization to access the Treasury database. So these are actually like balance of power, which is a basic concept that we learn about in civics, is being completely circumvented right now. And that is wrong. That is completely wrong. And let's call it what it is. It's a coup. That's what it is. It's a coup. It's not a violent coup, but the fact that it's not violent makes it even more effective. The fact that this coup is kind of hard to understand because a regular person doesn't really understand what's going on here. They just see the headlines that, oh, the United States is spending $1 million to give condoms to this random African country, and now it's not happening because Elon stopped it. They read that headline and they get excited. But what they don't understand is that the way that this is happening is completely illegal and a net bad for the country. Elon is completely off the rails. You've got this video of Elon. Elon goes to Germany and he does a Hitler salute. Producer, have you seen this?
No.
It's just completely crazy. Talk about, I forget the Greek, it might be Roman. There's a parable, whatever you want to call it, of a Greek person who is trapped in a castle and they build wings made out of wax to fly out of the castle. Can you look this up? Icarus? Thank you. Look, my producer's so brilliant. He already knew the name just like that. He didn't even need Google. Icarus flew too close to the sun. And that's Elon. Never meet your heroes. But I guess in this case, I don't even have to meet him. Elon was a guy that I really admired for his engineering genius and his ability to transform the American economy. But the longer this guy is in the public spotlight, it's becoming more and more clear that he's possibly mentally ill, certainly a racist, and kind of just deranged and power hungry. This guy goes online, and this is completely real. He goes into group chats like chat rooms like Xbox Live, but it's on Twitter. You can think of it as Xbox Live for those of you who play video games. He goes into chat rooms pretending to be somebody else, but it's clearly him because they talk in the same way, in the same cadence. Have you seen this, producer?
No.
This is actually hilarious. You got to look this up. He goes into chat rooms pretending to be someone else and defends Elon Musk. He's defending himself in chat rooms on the internet, pretending to be somebody else. And people in the chat room are like, we know it's you, Elon. You sound just like Elon Musk. And the guy's like, no, I'm not Elon. I am Spartacus, whatever, his fake name. But it's obviously Elon Musk. So this guy is so deranged that he's going into online chat rooms pretending to be somebody else and defending himself. You know how fucking crazy you have to be? Talk about a waste of time. This guy, doesn't he have 15 companies to run, plus working for the government now? And he's using his free time at 2 a.m. in the morning to go on chat rooms. He's just completely deranged. This guy, the longer he's in the public sphere, the less and less public support he's going to have. Anybody who even does 30 minutes looking into this is going to lose their popular opinion of Elon. And I've been saying for a while for those of you who watch, a lot of you guys are my close friends. You guys know that I've had a sour opinion of Elon for a very long time now. And it brings me great joy to see that now public perception of Elon, so his popularity rating, is actually lower than Joe Biden now. So the public opinion of Elon is now in the high 20s or low 30s. And it used to be in the 70s or 80s. So in just a year or 2 years, Since he became political, his popularity has tanked. But wait, you're saying, wait a second, Nick. How could Elon's popularity be in the low 30s and high 20s if Trump's popularity is now at an all-time high? I believe it just hit like 48%. His popularity rating is as high as it's ever been. Well, that's because Elon is a crazy person. He's even crazier than Trump is. So people are looking at what Elon's doing, and he's the front man, as I discussed earlier. So Elon's taken the heat for Trump. And this is a great thing. And I say that because there was a lot of talk that Elon was like the vice president or the shadow president. These headlines were coming out early in the Trump presidency. And when I say early, I mean literally 2 weeks ago, because the guy's been in power for like a few weeks now. So when I was in India, I was reading headlines about how he's the secret president. But Trump's kind of sabotaging him, whether it be on purpose or on accident. And Elon's public approval is so low that now he needs Trump. Because once Trump lets go of him, he's lost all of his political capital. Elon's got to go. He's got to go. He's too radical. And I don't care about the marginal, because look, at the end of the day, the cuts he's making to government spending are marginal. Let's be clear about that. No matter how big the numbers are, 1 billion, 500 million, no matter what number you see in the headline of the money he's cutting or whatever, or the corruption or waste of government money that he's discovering, it's a drop in the bucket. The U.S. government is going to be broke and bankrupt until we handle the Social Security problem, the Medicare, the Medicaid problem, the government pensions problem, and the trade deficit problem. Those are the 5 key problems that are bankrupting this country. Any discussion of any other funding outside of those 5 is pennies and not even worth discussing. Let's be very clear about that. They're talking about ending the Department of Education. That's crumbs. That you couldn't even feed an Indian child on those crumbs. That's how small it is. Okay? Anything besides trade deficits, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, government pensions. Anything you hear in the news about those 5 that's not those 5 things, you should basically ignore, as it doesn't matter. All of Elon's contributions are going towards things that are not those 5 items. He's a dead weight, and he's got to go. That's enough Elon talk. I'm actually getting frustrated even talking about the guy. I mean, really, we should just send him to jail. He's broken laws at this point, and it's just ridiculous. We're now going to cut to another, while we're on the topic of foreign citizens and South Africans, let's talk about another person who wants to be a foreign citizen. And that would be this New York City resident who was stranded in Pakistan. Producer, have you heard of this?
No.
This is my favorite story. Now, I was in India, obviously, and India is right next to Pakistan. So whenever I use the internet, I'm just flooded with this lady. So I'm going to give you guys the background, okay? She lives in New York City, and the second you listen to her, you can tell. And she's online dating. She's dating a guy online who apparently lives in Pakistan. So, spoiler alert, she's getting catfished. Okay. Well, she's in love with this guy. She's in love with this Pakistani. She buys a plane ticket to Pakistan, a one-way plane ticket. Gets herself a visa, a temporary visa, for I think it was 30 days. And the plan was that she would show up in Pakistan, meet her lover, they'd get married, and she'd become a Pakistani citizen. That was her plan. Well, she gets to Pakistan, and who would have thought, she's completely ghosted. And the guy she's been talking to and giving money to in Pakistan probably doesn't meet her. She got catfished. But in her delusion, she refuses to leave the country. So she's staying in Pakistan. So what does she do? Rather than coming back to the United States and buying a plane ticket, she feels that she has been defrauded and scammed, which she has been. But that's her own fault because she lacked the intelligence and she went against the judgment of her son and family members who were telling her that she was getting scammed. She's demanding from the Pakistani government. These were her demands. She has since come home. She came home a few days ago. But this story has been unfolding for months, and it slipped under the radar of American media because once again, it's really a know-nothing story, but I still want to talk about it because I got exposed when I was in India. Because over there, that's all they talk about. Like when people would find out I was an American, they're like, what do you think of this lady from New York City? And I would always say the same thing. You can keep her. We don't want her back. You can keep her. So so she's over there and she's demanding $2,000 in cash, presumably to pay for a flight back to the United States. Plus she wants a little something on top, right? Because, she's a welfare queen from New York City. So of course that's how these people operate. And she wants a passport. She wants citizenship in Pakistan. And now she gets on the news media and the people of Pakistan don't know how to react. There's complete confusion and disarray. Because you see, here's the thing, guys. Pakistan's not a safe place. So if this woman wasn't an American, they would just execute her on the spot. But she's an American. So they got to be careful. Because we will literally carpet bomb this whole country. Just if you kill one of our most degenerate and useless citizens. That's how virtuous we are and protective we are of our own people. We are so protective of our citizens that we will go to war for even the worst, for even our worst. Trump's been talking about renouncing the citizenship of recently naturalized immigrants, which is completely illegal and he shouldn't do. That's my stance. Completely ridiculous. But actually, we should just renounce this lady's citizenship. Force her to stay in Pakistan. Let them deal with the issue. This lady is a walking head case and creates drama everywhere she goes. She gets in touch with a Pakistani media company. She assembles a team. Yes, you heard that right. A staff of people. And the staff of Pakistanis, by the way, she doesn't even speak Arabic. Or she can't even she can only communicate in English. So she can't even communicate with people. So all the press conferences she does are completely in English, and the reporters don't even understand half of what she's saying. And she assembles a team. This is absolute. You got to look into this. Her press conferences are incredible. And now she starts talking that she wants money from the Pakistani government, and she says, quote, I'm going to rebuild this country. I'm going to give charity. I'm going to start a charity. I'm going to build schools. I'm going to build hospitals. I'm going to take care of the great people of Pakistan. She is literally pulling the same scam that her fake lover did against her, but she's doing it to a whole country. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't even tell if the Pakistanis are aware of the scam or not. I think some of them are and think it's ridiculous, but she's getting media. The people love her. Whenever she hosts a press conference, literally 50, 60 journalists with cameras are watching her. And she's getting money. People from Pakistan are like donating to her cause. Like she's started an actual legitimate charity within the country. And she's like collecting money for outreach. It's a scam. She's just pocketing all the money. But part of me thinks that life is so boring in Pakistan that people love this kind of entertainment. It's almost like she's introduced the whole country to reality TV. And the people of Pakistan are getting a taste of, like I said, American criminality. This is an American citizen who is basically single-handedly scamming an entire country. Let's be clear. The Pakistan government wants to get rid of her. But the American government was like, you can keep her. We don't want her back. We're not paying for that flight. She can handle it herself. So now she's just a woman without a country. It's like that, what's that? Who plays Forrest Gump? Tom Hanks. It's like that it's called The Terminal. Great movie. It's like the Tom Hanks movie where he's a man without a country. She's a woman with a country, but we don't want her back. And we should keep her, but she's actually come home. She came home a few days. This is a great story. It shows what just one degenerate American citizen from New York City can do to completely destabilize a country and basically co-opt the entire media. I mean, Pakistan was having local elections. They're at war with India. They're having a water crisis. So many legitimate issues are going on in Pakistan, but she just completely took over the media. And all people care about is this American citizen who is throwing press conferences. And what's the best part is whenever they ask her a question that will expose her fraud, her answer is, quote, that's against my religion and not your business. That's literally what she says. And she says it in like a New York City, like you're walking down the like 8th in the Bronx. Like that's how she's talking. She's like, "That's not your business. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, I'm going home now." That's how she talks to these people. She's so disrespectful, even though, and like it's become her brand. It's incredible. It really, I love it. It's great, guys. You got to look into it. It's gonna make you laugh, and I wish they kept her. I really do. I mean that's a good program. We should start shipping people to other countries. I mean, that'd be a great CIA program, just a psyop to completely co-opt foreign news. You know the chaos we could do if we sent like 15 black women from New York City to like Shenzhen or to Shanghai? It would be absolutely insane. You think that they would? I mean, their social credit score would be so deep in the gutter that they would be plastered on every wall and they would use it to gain popularity. Because they do that in China. If your social credit score is too low, they put your face on the wall around the city. But Americans would actually use that to their advantage to gain, because remember, any press is good press. Any press is good press. So I just wanted to talk about that. I thought that was pretty funny. Let's get into some more foreign affairs here, and then we'll cycle back to some domestic stuff. We've got to talk about Trump's quote to, quote, "conquer and own Gaza." I've been calling it for months. You guys know I have been, if you've had conversations with me. It's called mission creep, guys, for those of you who haven't heard of it. Mission creep is the idea that you start with something acceptable, like Palestine attacked Israel, we have to help Israel defend themselves. That's how it starts. But then it creeps a little bit. Now we are carpet bombing the citizens. Okay, well, apparently Hamas hides their weapons and their missiles in civilian buildings. So is it tragic that we're killing civilians? Yes, but it's necessary as an act of war. And it's their fault because they're hiding behind their own citizens. That's the second step. Third step is, well, we've got to create a demilitarized zone. So we're going to order all the citizens to move to the southern half of Gaza. And we're just going to roll in with our tanks and occupy the north half as a safety measure. Okay, that's now. Do you see how the mission creep? You watching how this unfolds? By the way, this is all Biden. All of this happened under Biden, and Biden was complicit, but not outwardly supportive of Israel's genocide. Now Trump takes office. Trump says, "Let's kill them all. Let's just do complete ethnic cleansing of Gaza." By the way, there's some really beautiful beachfront property on the Mediterranean. That's actually what he's been saying. There's videos of Jared Kushner online saying that they're going to develop Gaza. They're going to turn it into a Middle Eastern resort, and we're going to use the funds from these resorts in Gaza as an income stream for the United States government. Like, this is actually what's happening. This is serious talks. And if nothing happens, if the international community doesn't step in, this is what's going to happen, guys. We, the United States, are going to be complicit in the worst ethnic cleansing since the Armenian genocide. And it's happening right now. Before the invasion of Gaza by Israel, it was estimated that Gaza had about 2.2 million citizens. Now, according to Trump, there's 1.7 million. That's according to him, which means that over 500,000 Gazans have been killed. That is crazy. That's a lot of people, guys. I mean, that's more deaths than have happened in the Ukraine war, right? So that's absolutely insane. And keep in mind, most of the deaths in the Ukraine war are soldiers. I mean, the vast majority of deaths are soldiers because there were civilian casualties early on in the initial Russian invasion, but ever since the fighting has basically become trench warfare, it's mainly civilian deaths. Upwards of 80 to 90% of these deaths in Gaza are civilian deaths. So, this is an ethnic cleansing. Let's call it what it is. Let's not pretend it's something else. Trump said, quote, "We are going to conquer and own Gaza." This is not good. This is a bad idea. First off, it's not even going to work. I mean, there's so many people. We're either going to have to kill all of them, which is ethically wrong, or we're going to have to deport them into surrounding countries. But the surrounding countries don't want them. Now, Democrats will come out and say that the supporting countries don't want them because the supporting countries don't want to be complicit in a genocide. And that might be true, but that's only partially true. The conservative faction of the supporting countries, when I say supporting countries, I mainly mean Egypt and Jordan. Let's be very clear. Lebanon is technically a bordering country, but I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news. Israel basically wiped out the entire army of Lebanon, as I discussed at the end of the previous episode. That was Hezbollah. So they completely destroyed that entire. So Lebanon's basically become a failed state. And Syria is also a failed state, which I also discussed in the previous episode. So the only places that these refugees could go is Jordan or Egypt. And the conservative faction in both of these countries, they don't want the Gazans because they don't like the Gazans. They're racist against the Gazans. They view the Gazans as less than human. And that's not me exaggerating. That's actually how the conservative faction in these countries feel. And currently, the conservative party in Jordan and Egypt are in power. So it's true that if they were to be taking in the refugees, they'd be complicit in a genocide. But the real reason they don't want them is because they don't like them. And they don't have the infrastructure to take in this many immigrants who admittedly have no marketable skills. I mean, you basically would just be importing people that become homeless and beggars. Let's just be honest about it. It's not a good situation. But it's also not a good situation to kill them all. Obviously, that's wrong. But that's what's being proposed. And so when I got back from India, I immediately went south and I stayed in Baltimore with one of my closest friends. And Baltimore is obviously very, we'll ballpark it, hour and a half from Washington, D.C. So we went into the city on 2 separate nights. And the first night that we were in the city, I believe it was a Tuesday night, it might have been a Wednesday. But the first night that we're in the city, I was unaware of this, but Netanyahu was also in D.C. And press conferences happened where Trump said, that's where Trump made the statement that we were going to own Gaza. And they're sitting in a chair. And Trump says they're going to take over Gaza. And Netanyahu is right next to him, grinning and smiling like the Grim Reaper. So excited at the prospect. And he got a pager. They gave a statue to Trump. And the statue is a pager made out of gold because, the pagers, Israel blew up the pagers to destroy Hezbollah, as I discussed in the previous episode. So it's a statue made of gold, and it's a pager, and it says, "To our dearest friend, Donald Trump." He gives him that statue made out of gold, and he's excited that the United States is going to, quote, own Gaza. So let's see just how much of a clusterfuck this becomes. Because I'm telling you right now, it ain't going to go well. I mean, it's going to tarnish our international reputation. But even for those of you in the audience that don't care about it, if you think this is actually going to go down without American soldiers and American deaths, you're insane. These people are not going to give up their land without a fight. They're not going to. We certainly wouldn't, and they're not going to either. Now, yeah, they're going to lose in the long term, but at what cost? At what financial cost? At what human cost? At what ethical cost? Putting aside our morals and our ideals of spreading freedom across the world. This is a terrible idea. That happened on the first night I was there. I then went back to D.C. a few nights later, and by that point, protesters had found out the hotel that Netanyahu was staying in D.C., and it's right next to the White House, so it wasn't really that hard to find. Maybe it got leaked by the press. And they had a massive, producer, you could put this on the screen. They had a massive projection on the wall of the hotel, and there was a huge protest right outside of his hotel room, and they had Palestinian flags, and it was a big group of people, and they had a war drum. Because I'm walking down the street with my friend, and we hear drums. We actually, at first, we actually thought it was gunshots at first, but then we realized it was a drum. And it's people, drumming outside of his hotel, calling Netanyahu what he is, which is a war criminal and a Zionist and a colonizer, and they are saying that he should be arrested. Netanyahu is already deemed a criminal by the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and he has an arrest warrant out for him, which means that technically the second Netanyahu landed in the United States, we should have arrested him and sent him to The Hague and turned him into the ICC. But we went against the ICC's verdict. Keep in mind, Putin also has a war criminals ICC warrant out for his arrest. If Putin were to land in the United States, we would arrest him on the spot. But since we're supporting this genocide in Israel, we allow Netanyahu to stay here, and we put him up in a lavish hotel that costs thousands of dollars a night to stay in right next to the White House. So there's a projection on the wall, and yeah, Netanyahu is not a good guy. We should arrest him. And there's people in the streets, and once again, I, as a citizen, am bothered. Not only am I bothered that we're complicit in this genocide and that we're sheltering a war criminal, but I'm also bothered because the protest was taking place right outside of my restaurant, which bothered me for the entire time I was eating because the drums were incessant and I was trying to hold a nice conversation with my friend. We ate at the Hamilton, beautiful restaurant in Washington, D.C. So if you guys know where that restaurant's located, it was literally on that street right next to the restaurant. So that's where you can, they have great crab soup right there. Love the crab soup at the Hamilton. So if you ever get the chance to go to D.C., I would definitely go to the Hamilton. It's better than Old Ebbitt Grill. So that's enough on that. Well, producer, you could throw up a few pictures of this protest. I'm sure you've been doing it this whole time. So yeah, that's kind of our foreign policy talk. Now we're going to do a quick ad break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a TV show that's sweeping across America, the fires that are sweeping across America, and we're going to wrap it up with some commodities talk. Tired of being treated with respect? If so, join us at T-Mobile, where we can satisfy all of your low-cost cellular needs. Our staff are prepared to confuse you and yell at you with outrageous promotions that your broke ass is dependent on. Due to popular demand, T-Mobile is proud to announce their new company-wide initiative, No Hablo Inglés. No Hablo Inglés will convert all of our English-speaking staff to Spanish speakers so we can better communicate with you, our customers. Just like a Mexican, our cell towers work around the clock to process your wire transfers and stream your telenovelas. So what are you waiting for? Usa T-Mobile conmigo! Back from the ad break. T-Mobile's a proud sponsor of this show, and because of that, we're going to talk about another property that they've sponsored recently, TV shows sweeping across America. We've got Beast Games on Amazon Prime Video. If you're not watching this, you gotta get in on it, especially if you're a huge fan of Squid Games or reality TV. You see, Beast Games has lower stakes than Squid Game, as in the people that get eliminated simply lose the opportunity at winning money. Whereas in Squid Game, obviously if you lose, you die, but it's a fictional show. But in a very real sense, Beast Games is more real because it explores the full range of human emotions. I mean, think about the kind of person that's going to drop their life to go on a TV show to win money. These are people that are generally unemployed. These are people in bad circumstances. These people are desperate, right? So they really should just call this show the Poverty Olympics, because every single segment is just people backstabbing each other and telling their own sob stories. But it's in that desperation, in that true American sentiment, that you get, honestly, something incredible. You enjoy watching the suffering of others and the ingenuity that desperation can create. People manipulating others. I mean, a lot of the challenges, to be totally honest, a lot of the challenges at their core are kind of the same. They all focus on pretty much the prisoner's dilemma. That's what the vast majority of the challenges boil down to. So much to the point that one of the challenges, they put 3 people in a box and literally force one to become a prisoner. So the challenges at the end of the day could have been more creative, and a lot of them focus on like self-sacrifice, but that's okay, because what's going on here is by the end of the show, you as the viewer are saying to yourself, who here that remains has a better sob story? That's pretty much what you're asking yourself. And whoever does is kind of the person that you're rooting for. So, I mean, I guess I should have started with the premise of the show. The premise of the show is that you got 500. Yeah, that's accurate. You got 500 people. It's 5,000?
1,000.
It was 1,000. Thank you, producer. 1,000, not 500. Oh, right, because half of them get eliminated. Okay, so you have 1,000 people competing for, what is it, 5 mil? There you go. You have 1,000 people competing for $5 million. That's the grand prize at the end. And from the very start, they just start slashing people. The TV show only has 10 episodes, right? So, I mean, even if you were to eliminate half of the people per episode, you would need more than 10 episodes. So you could imagine how brutal it gets. You know, some episodes, more than half of the contestants get completely eliminated. But T-Mobile is a proud sponsor of Beast Games, which is why, in conjunction with them, we thought we would discuss the TV show and ask you guys to go ahead and watch Beast Games, because the kind of person who watches Beast Games is the prime customer for T-Mobile. I mean, this is the kind of person who has the time to watch trash reality television, and a T-Mobile customer has that level of poverty in their life to where they can relate with the contestants on the TV show. So it's a great opportunity for cross-marketing, and we wanted to join in on that because we believe in T-Mobile's mission, which is hooking up the poorest among us to the internet around the United States. So I know that's an extended ad, but we have taken a large sum of money from T-Mobile for this episode, and that came included with, as I mentioned earlier, an outrageous promotion that my broke ass depends on. So, moving on from our proud sponsor of T-Mobile, we're moving into the Super Bowl halftime show. Now, I'll come out with my bias right away. I'm an Eagles fan. I know that's an unpopular opinion because our fans are completely degenerate. Some of the most violent, ruthless people. And what I really enjoy about the fans of my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, is that when we win, we celebrate by destroying our own city. And that really shows that the best thing that you can do in Philadelphia is break things, because the city's better off destroyed than repaired. That's how bad Philadelphia is. Now, during the Eagles halftime show, they really did a great job of picking a halftime performer that embodied the energy of Philadelphia. If you guys have been to Philadelphia, you'll know there's not a white person in sight. So that was a good, they chose Kendrick Lamar. That's his name, right, producer? Okay. That's who they chose to perform at the halftime show. And I'm going to be honest, I actually kind of liked the show. I was really surprised that I liked it, but I did like it. And you've got a lot of people on the internet, especially conservatives, coming out saying that they didn't like the halftime show. Now, here's the thing. A picture tells 1,000 words. And the imagery of Kendrick's performance was able to break that language barrier that him and I share. And you've got some great symbolism going on. A divided America. You've got the dancers in red, white, and blue. Right at the very start of the performance, and look, am I reading into it too much? Possibly. But Kendrick's an artist, so I'm going to run with the assumption that he wanted his performance to be analyzed. That's how I'm going to read this. At the very beginning of the performance, you've got a series of backup dancers coming out of what's effectively a clown car. I mean, 70, 80 people come out of this car? It's incredible. I mean, they've obviously got it hooked up to the bottom of the stage. But all these dancers come out, and immediately the dancers are separated by color. I read that as the racial divide in the United States. That's how I interpreted it. And, Kendrick is standing in the middle because he doesn't know in which direction to go. Because, the message that I was getting was that as a Black American, he's now achieved wealth and status, which is what most African Americans never get to experience. So that's putting him in league with a lot of white people. That's the impression that I got, but he was in between. A lot of the choreography has him in between the different colors of the flag, inside of the circle, outside of the circle, but always surrounded by different colors. They've got Samuel L. Jackson, a very famous actor, great actor, very good in Django Unchained, by the way, if you've seen that movie. They've got Samuel L. Jackson playing the role of Uncle Sam. Perfect, because his name's Samuel. And, Samuel L. Jackson is making comments throughout the performance about how Kendrick's music is too ghetto. And too Black. He literally says that. It's too ghetto. And then at one point, Kendrick sings, because he sung, I think it was approximately 5 songs. That's more or less accurate. And one of the songs that Kendrick sings is more tasteful to white sensibilities. And Uncle Sam comes in and says, please give us more of that. That's what he actually says in the performance. I'd really recommend that you kind of go back and watch the performance as a piece of art. Because once again, just like when I was in India and I don't speak Hindi and I don't speak Kannada, I was still able to appreciate beauty and art. The same thing can happen here. Yeah, you don't understand what he's saying. You don't speak his language, but you can understand the artwork, the abstract nature of it. The racial divide in the United States. I mean, and then underneath it all, it's the video game. He kind of describes life in America as a video game. I mean, the stage is literally a PlayStation controller. Triangle, X, square, and circle at different corners. And at different points of the show, he's using those shapes to tell a story. So once again, I really thought it was a creative use of space, a good use of color, powerful imagery, very good. And let's also say, I might be wrong on this, but basically no cursing, which I enjoyed. That's good because the Super Bowl is a family event. So I appreciated that he was because I went ahead and I listened to the, I guess we'll call them the original versions of those songs that he sang. And there's a lot of cursing in those songs, but he basically censored himself at the Super Bowl, which I appreciated because it's a family show and he took that into account. Even the apparel. Today, a lot of these pop stars, man, woman, backup dancers, they're basically finding creative ways to get naked on stage. But that really wasn't the case here, which I appreciated. That was good. So I actually think it was tasteful. I think it had good symbolism. And, there was a few songs in there that are popular. He's got this, this diss track against Drake. I really don't know the story behind it. I'm saying I literally have no idea what's going on. But, my urban friends told me that it's like a big deal that like he sang that song, something about a lawsuit. Producer, is this making sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, apparently like he might face legal challenges for singing that song because Drake is going to come after him. But what I say to that is, I'm happy he sang the song because that is also American, right? Free speech, freedom of expression. It's a piece of art. It's a piece of music. And if Drake is offended by what's happening in the song, perhaps, I don't know, maybe he can make a song of his own or something to counter Kendrick's. I don't really know how black people fight these days. But, maybe he could respond in song as well. So I really enjoyed the halftime show. I thought it was a great piece of art. And I hope that future performances can rise to that level of artistry, but possibly we can mix the beautiful artistry of this performance with songs that I actually know and that I can sing along to. But still a B+ performance, certainly better than last year, and probably better than the worst halftime show that I can remember, which was the Black Eyed Peas. They have great music, but you should go back and take a minute and watch their halftime show. It was absolutely terrible. So this certainly beats that. That's our episode for today. I know it was quite lengthy, but I've been gone for a long time, and if you thought this hiatus was a while, get ready for my next one. I don't think I'm going to be able to record another one of these episodes until late March or maybe April. So I hope I gave you guys enough content to enjoy in the meantime. We really appreciate you guys listening, and maybe I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but we're going to have timestamps in the description, and we're going to have, visual aids for those of you who watch with video rather than podcast format. Comments are always appreciated. Please give us a like and feel free to share this with anybody that you think would be interested. Even if it's a 10-minute segment, you can obviously listen to what interests you down in the description. Thank you all for joining us for the No Good News podcast, and I'll see you later. Bye.